Hello viewers, welcome back to another episode of Liberating Minds. My name is Maghanga. Today we shall be looking at the concept of democracy. What is democracy? Is Kenya really a democratic country? What does a democratic country look like? What is this democratic system that we'd want our country to go through and to experience? The first question that we ask ourselves today is, what is democracy? Democracy is a system in which the people of a particular country or a particular state get to participate in the running of that country or that state or that republic, and basically they get to have a say in all the affairs of that country. So be it the way that the political structure and the political system is run, be it the way that enterprises are organized and run, be it the way the economy is constituted and organized and run, be it the way the society in general is set up and runs. So basically a system in which the people have a say and the people actually get to participate in all these things. Having defined democracy in that manner, can we say that in Kenya, the people get to participate in all these processes and in all these systems, basically in the economic, in the social, in the political life of the country? Let's look at enterprises, for instance. Do the people of Kenya have a say in the manner in which the economic life of the country is set up and run, and in particular, the way in which enterprises are set up and run? By enterprises, of course, we mean industries, companies, farms, institutions in which our economic material articles of consumption are developed, are produced. Do the people who work in these enterprises get to have a say in the manner in which these enterprises run? When you're employed in a particular company, do you get to give your opinion on how you'd like work to be organized, production to be structured and organized, work to be distributed among the various people who work with you in that enterprise, etc.? Is there really democracy in that? Or what happens is that you get employed, and then in this enterprise that you've been employed in, work has already been determined for you. So for you, you'll be doing this and this for this particular amount of time. We see that the latter is the case, and that because these enterprises are only owned by a few individuals, those who now give you employment, you don't get to have a say in the manner in which they are run. So in that case, there is no democracy in the enterprise. If we look at the political system, can we say in Kenya that really people get to participate in the manner in which our political system is set up and organized? Let's take an example of our legislative bodies, right from the county level to the national level. These representatives, the members of county assemblies, the members of National Assembly, and the senators, whatever proceedings that take place in these legislative bodies, they reflect the opinions of the people that sent these representatives to these bodies. A quick look at this matter would reveal that the answer is no. That most of the time what happens is the proceedings that take place in these bodies only take place in the interest of particular groups which lobby for whatever they're pushing for to be discussed and to be passed. Let's take a very good example of what's happened recently. The finance bill that the Kenya Kwanza administration through its legislators was trying to push. We see that the majority of the Kenyan people overwhelmingly rejected the finance bill. They said, no, we don't want this, and we don't want this bill because it's going to mean that the already high cost of living is going to go even higher, because for the very basics of existence, food, fuel, sanitary towels, etc., prices are going to go up, and they're going to go up because the government is going to increase taxes on them, and therefore the prices are going to be increased and they're going to fall on the consumer, on the ordinary Kenyan. So Kenyans rejected the finance bill, but what did the legislators do? They voted yes to pass the finance bill. So we say that these people who are in these legislative bodies work contrary to the wishes of the people who sent them there. So that means this is not democracy. It means the manner in which the political system conducts its business is a manner which does not involve or does not take into account what the people want. And therefore we see that there's no democracy in that regard. And this is not the only thing, this is not the only instance that has shown us that these legislative bodies work against us. the several bills that have been passed just this year. For instance, after the finance bill, there was the appropriations bill, which of course gives the president power to continue to increase taxation measures on commodities as well, to raise revenue on those commodities. We have seen this anti-demonstrations bill, that's placed here. And what it wants to achieve is basically to discourage protests, because it's putting limits to the manner in which our protests, which are a constitutional right, are conducted. So all these are bills which are being discussed in the National Assembly, and they go against the wishes of the people of Kenya. There's also the Seed Act, which limits exchange of indigenous seeds among farmers. And we see that all these, what they're meant to serve is not the people of Kenya and their interests, but rather the interests of just a few corporates and a few elites who basically want to benefit from these bills. So they're the ones lobbying. All these are instances in which we see a lack of democracy, and instances in which we see our legislative bodies going against the wishes of the people. The other thing, of course, is the privatizations of public assets and public operations that has been going on. The most recent, of course, is the Adani deal, which our government has made with Adani to privatize our airports and to give them the right to run our airports for the next 30 years. We see that there's going to be very little benefit. We know what happens when public assets, public operations are privatized. One of the first things that take place is the retrenchment of all those workers who are employed under those parastatals. So we're going to see an increase in poverty and inequality. Obviously, these are people who have been working there for a long time, most of them permanently employed, and we know the ripple effect that comes with retrenchment. And the worst thing of all is that this money that's going to be generated as revenue from these public assets, specifically for this Adani deal, the airports, we see that now it's not going to go to the people of Kenya, but to some corporates, just a few individuals. And of course, that's going to be detrimental. The people of Kenya have overwhelmingly rejected this deal, but we see that the government has continued to push it, and the government continues to say that it's a good thing. All these are instances in which we see that there being a lack of democracy and the people of Kenya being alienated and excluded from the political processes that take place. Another instance is when we look at how elections are conducted in our country. Of course, we know that if you want to vie for a particular position, the requirements are stipulated in our constitution. If you want to become president, if you want to run for any elective seat, senator, governor, member of county assembly, member of national assembly. And of course, what this means is that any Kenyan who meets these requirements can participate in this electoral process to that extent. But really, can any ordinary Kenyan, based on what we've seen, become president? This president that we have right now, President Ruto, was he chosen by the consent of the majority of the people? Or was he chosen because the people had been made to think that we only had two choices, Raila and Ruto, and it was one or the other? There was no other alternative that was there to help steer Kenya forward. When you look at the situation, you'd see that, in fact, the latter is true. When you look at the electoral process, all the events leading up to the elections, you see that we had over 40 presidential candidates. We had so many people who expressed interest to become president, but deliberately the state locked out most of those presidential aspirants for excuses that were flimsy. We see that the people of Kenya were boxed into this corner and made to think or to feel as though they only had these two choices, which was not true. We don't have only two choices. We have so many options. We have so many alternatives. We have so many ways in which we feel our country should go forward and should run. All these are examples. We are continuing to dissect this concept of democracy, and we're continuing to look at our country today and to see if it's there or if it's non-existent, or if it's illusory, and that's what we're trying to see. Even for any elective seat, if you want to vie for member of National Assembly, we know how these electoral campaigns take place, how millions are spent giving people money so that they attend political meetings, sponsoring people to conduct certain acts of violence and intimidation against opponents, etc. All these are things that as Kenyans we see happening, right? Of course, we know these are electoral offenses, but these people usually get away with them. And these are things that happen. When we see these things happening, when we analyze it, we see that it is deliberate. It is deliberately meant to alienate the rest of the people, ordinary Kenyans, from the electoral process. Because when the entire electoral process has been marred by voter bribery and there's all these expectations that people have about an aspirant, then it means if you're not rich, if you're not able to mobilize violence, if you're not able to do this or that, if you're not able to perform these things, these distasteful things that these current politicians do when they vie for these positions, then it will be impossible for you to get elected. So therefore, do we see that this has created a situation in which the majority of the people have been alienated from the entire process, so that it's only a few rich people who are even able to vie for those positions and to win them, and who are able to basically participate in the entire electoral process. So it's a very clever way of taking away the people's will and the people's ability to represent themselves, so that we end up with only criminals, goons, rich people. All this, of course, continues to unmask this illusion of democracy and continues to show that the people of Kenya really will not participate in the entire political process. When we look at our society and our culture, we also see that often what the people feel should be aired, for instance, in entertainment channels, or should be shown as part of the news, etc., isn't what is shown. The music that we listen to, we see that all these things are predetermined by certain people who are pursuing certain interests. We see how there's heavy Western influence in our media, culture, and the music that is played to us. Foreign content, that is Western-oriented is what is played to us, be it movies and music. And the people of Kenya are meant to think that that's what they want, but really that's not what we want. We want content that represents what our culture is, what our aspirations are, what our views are as a society. All these are examples of how our people do not get really to participate in the running of their own country. So having said that, we are forced to answer this question of what would a democratic Kenya look like? When we say that Kenya is truly democratic, what would it look like? So first of all, what we must grasp is that the democracy we want, or the democracy that we would say is our democracy, is what is known as a people's democracy. And what do we mean by a people's democracy? A people's democracy is a situation in which now the people themselves actually participate in the entire running of the country, in the entire political, economic, and social life of the country that they live in. Having attained that, we would say now that Kenya actually is democratic. How would that be different from the system already that we have now? It would be different in some practical ways. For instance, when we talk about representation and legislation, what a true people's democracy would look like is that councils would be established and would be running right from the lowest level, right from the neighborhood level, from the workplace level. If we say that we have democracy at the workplace, that would mean that all the workers, all the staff members in a particular enterprise actually get to meet and they get to discuss the affairs of that enterprise, but also get to have a say in the manner in which their work takes place, in which the production that they do takes place. So that's a workplace democracy. So councils are established in every workplace, in every enterprise. Councils are also established in every neighborhood. If you live in Mathare, then in your neighborhood, where it's, a collection of certain households, maybe in a certain street, there is a council of those households that meet there. If you live in Dagoretti, if you live in Kibera, if you live in whichever part of the country where you live in, there are councils that are established right from the neighborhood level, in which people meet on a regular basis to discuss the goings on in their own neighborhoods, but also to discuss policy recommendations. So these councils right at the workplace and the neighborhood levels get to send delegates to councils at a higher regional level. For instance, a ward or a constituency would have its own council as well, which has been made up of delegates who have been sent as representatives from these councils at the lowest level. It will go on to the county level and to the national level as well. So that if we have a council at the national level, then it is made up of ordinary Kenyans ordinary citizens who have been sent there as representatives right from the lowest level and who get to participate, talk about their issues in their neighborhoods and their workplaces, and also to legislate on a national level. So you say whatever things that should be done at that national level, and that becomes law, and that becomes legislation on behalf of the nation. How different this is from the current system is that first, these are ordinary people who are living ordinary lives. So it's not like when you've been sent as a representative to these councils or these assemblies, you would stop working the usual job that you were doing. No, if you're a teacher, if you're a doctor, if you're a lawyer, if you're a plumber, if you're a farmer, whatever work you were doing, you would continue to do it. It's only that once a week, maybe, you've been given permission to go represent your people in this council meeting and say what you people feel about this particular issue and this particular issue. It's not a career for you. You're not a career politician. You're an ordinary citizen participating in the political life of the society. And of course, representatives in this true people's democracy would be recalled at any time the people feel these people are not representing them well. The other thing is that there isn't any extra earnings that you get from your role as a representative of the people. You might, of course, be facilitated for your trips to the council if it's somewhere that's a bit distant, but really, you don't get paid anything extra just because you serve that role. So these are ways in which that would be different from this current system, in which, first of all, somebody says he's vying for Member of Parliament in Embakasi Central, for instance. He doesn't even live there. He lives somewhere in Westlands or somewhere in Karen. And then this person, now that he's been elected, and of course using bribery and using violence and all those ways, this person gets to function as though this is a separate job from already what was existing previously. And therefore, we see how these members of National Assembly, Senate, Cabinet, and all these people get to allocate themselves all sorts of allowances and salaries that are not even taxed, etc. So it will be different. So nobody would earn anything extra just because you are a representative of the people. You continue to be an ordinary person. If you are living in Korogosho, you continue to live in Korogosho because you're just there as a representative of the neighborhood people who thought you would better articulate the issues that they were going through. So this is real popular democracy. And through this, we would see that the most ordinary people would be the ones actually participating in the political life of the society, determining the direction of the country, saying what we feel actually about this or that policy, and of course saying what we think our country should do in order to make the lives of everyone collectively better. So that's also the other thing. What would be emphasized is the collective good of the people and not the interests of certain individuals or of certain corporate elites which would want to push this or that policy. So that's what would be different, and that's the definition of democracy. Kenyans, this is what we must do in order to ensure that in fact there is democracy in Kenya. Thank you, viewers. See you next time.